Is it hard for you to talk about your sexual wants, needs, and desires? Well, you're not alone. It's hard for everybody, and that's no pun intended. Are you hard right now and can't talk about it? Well, if so, this podcast is for you. Hi, I'm Toby. I'm from the band Emery. I've also led a bunch of men's groups with the True Man Experience, and I'm working on this podcast with Dr. Stormy, who is an amazing sex coach who has helped so many people. And that's what we're here to do. We were here to open up the conversation. You need to be able to talk about your sexual desires, your wants, and yes, even your needs, and where you can take your sex life with your partner. So sit back, relax. We're taking listener questions. We're going to have a great episode. Join us because this is the sex education you always wish you would have gotten. All right, we're back with another episode of Sex 101. It's really funny. A little bit before we hopped on, we were talking about our my what I'm going through right now in my life, and for me, post divorce, one of the things, Stormy, that I have found out, I've never asked you this before. Did you do any back to being single teenage stuff? Like this morning, right before the podcast, I was like, I'm hungry, and I just made a big old ham sandwich for breakfast. And while I was married, I would have never done that. My wife at the time would have made fun of me or whatever, And there's been a few times where I went and just had an Oreo for breakfast, or
totally.
I definitely left the toilet seat up in my house a bunch. I put a guitar magazine on the back of the toilet.
Oh my gosh.
For reading. I was like, I made a little bit. I mean, there is a little bit of that stuff. Like when you have the house back to yourself again, I don't know if you ever lived alone, or just, had just a roommate, but you had your own space or whatever. It feels a little bit like some of that stuff is kind of, I can't do it all the time. I'm not going to eat Oreos for breakfast all the time because I'll die. But it is kind of fun doing a little bit. Did you do anything fun like that for yourself or messier or cleaner? Or?
Totally. So it's so funny. So for me, what just popped in my mind is I had this bedroom. We had a bedroom that was upstairs in this little really old Victorian place. We were living in Los Angeles at the time when we separated. And I went out, and I'm not a particularly floral girl. I'm just not, and never really have been, a bit of a tomboy. I went out and bought the most obnoxiously floral pink sheets that I could find. Literally shabby chic, pink, antique looking. And I was and I redid my whole bed. And then I remember staring there being what am I doing? But I just knew that he would never, my ex-husband, soon to be ex-husband, would never have slept in them. So that was a funny one for me. I had those sheets for 10 years. Finally, I was I don't even like these sheets. They gotta go. They gotta go.
It's funny, those little things you do to kind of break, whatever you were doing, kind of break your brain out of that old cycle or old habits or something like that. It's really fun.
Totally.
So what a perfect segue to what an episode. I have been looking forward to this one for quite a while. This episode is the perfect blowjob. I am very excited to learn just about this subject. It's a subject near and dear to my heart personally. Mm-hmm. So I want to hear all about it. But before we get into all the juicy details here, Stormy, I know, I think I'm right. You got a 30-day online program and a free guide for the folks, the listeners out there. Can you tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we have our 30-day online program for Reignite Your Sexless Relationship. And so it's really, if you're a couple out there that's struggling with sex and intimacy, you want to kind of add some passion back, add some spice back, or really struggling with a sexless or low sex relationship. And you can check that out. There's a whole bunch of information on lovedeeperlab.com/reignite. So lovedeeperlab.com/reignite. And there's tons of information. Our new cohort, we started every month on the first of the month. So the next cohort starts on June 1st. And you can email me, stormy@lovedeeplab.com, if you have any questions about it. But it's a super powerful, from the kind of privacy of your own home, 30 days, just 4 different weeks of video worksheets, meditations, and practices for you that really will guide you back to passion in your relationship. And the reason we did that was because of, I can only coach so many clients individually. Right. And this was by request about how can we meet more people, help more people. And I have such a heart for relationships and such a heart for how do you keep passion going in a long-term relationship, because it's totally possible. So that's why we created that course. Yeah. And then the free guide, another one of my passions is how do we bring sacredness into sex and back into sex, right? We kind of have really separated. A lot of times we can separate like church and state, but also church and sex, and we don't need to. How do we bring the divine and sacred back into sex and into sexuality? And so we created a free Sacred Sex 101 guide, and you can shoot me an email, stormy@lovedeeplab.com, and I will send that over to you.
Yeah, that is awesome. I love that concept too of like that divineness, that sexuality, and that partnership that you have while having sex can really take you to. I mean, I've had really it when there is great sex and you're in tune and you're almost like dancing together and moving together, and it feels like not only just love, but you're right, like some kind of experience with something bigger than yourself in a way, and it just feels less. It's more than just you in the moment. You're not just getting your rocks off, like you are really connecting in a way that is unique and passion filled and just really fun. So all right, well, speaking of passion filled, let's get to the perfect blowjob, because and I'm hoping you start with just mostly that they should just always be done all the time. Is that where you're starting?
Oh my gosh, said like so many men out there. That was amazing. No, we're gonna start with the nerdy, the science part.
Okay.
But actually, I was gonna say it should be really called, the title, we love the title, super catchy, but it's actually should be called The Perfectly Good Blowjob, because the reality is there is no perfect blowjob, right? I always say, one blowjob, right? Like it really depends on the man, really depends on the woman, depends on the partnership. And so but really, that I tease about it, but it's also we want to give you guys some tips so you can enjoy it more, so your partner can enjoy it more. And also just to really encourage, like, right, it's a beautiful part. Oral sex is a beautiful part of sexuality, and beautiful part can be foreplay, or can be its own thing. So giving you some facts on that. And so I was looking up why it's called a blowjob, because it came to me, I was like, I don't know why. And so we actually don't, from what I found, we don't really know. It was like, I think it was coined in the 1950s, but the part was making me giggle. It's like, all right, you might blow a little bit, but you don't really blow all that much. And then if you're doing it right and really enjoying it, it's not really a job. So
right.
I don't really like the term, but I can't think of something catchy off the top of my head like to call it. But that made me kind of giggle a little bit.
I've always thought that like the worst thing that ever happened is that it's called work, and you have to blow a bunch, and everybody's like, oh, I don't want to do that. Or like I get mad when people go like, suck my dick. Like, no, you should let's say that positively. Like I was thinking, like if the president you voted for won, you're like, yeah, suck a dick. Like it should be some like, yes, this is awesome. Good news.
Right,
you know what I mean? Exactly. Not bad. Stay away from anything negative with this, because it's a really great thing. So yeah, I agree. I never understood why it's called blow. I never understood.
Yeah. And then just some statistics on it. I love the Kinsey Institute, obviously. So the Kinsey summary has said that 27% of men in the United States have had a blowjob in the last year, which made me like a little sad that was such a low percentage. So hopefully this podcast will change that over time. 79% of men have reported really great, like a high level of pleasure from receiving a blowjob. And then 38% of men have received one in the last month, right? So that, like, to me, I like the research because it shows where there is so much room for growth. And I just am super left brained. I like the research. So hopefully that it just gives you a foundation, right? So to me, what that showed me as I was looking through those statistics this morning is that we have a lot of room for growing our oral sex practices both ways. I mean, we should do another episode on a woman receiving oral sex, because that's a big gap on giving and receiving there, but maybe a podcast for another time. But so those are some of the statistics on blowjobs that are out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Those numbers. I do wonder too, like I'll have one for you later for Stump Stormy, but I wonder people report sometimes things, but then they're not, they're like self-reporting sometimes, like, oh yeah, I'll do this and that. But that's interesting that first one, what was the first one again? What was the percentage again of men who read that your first stat?
27% of men have had a blowjob in the last year. Only 27%.
Only 27% of men. I mean, that isn't. They're not faking. Men would say, "Oh, yeah, for sure, I get them all the time." Like that just hasn't. They haven't received that as much. And I do believe part of that is even just. I think we're starting to recognize I don't think it's an epidemic yet, but just communication and relationships, and with the rise of the apps and how we meet each other, it's more like if you see one thing wrong, swipe left or right before you actually find out those people. So I am concerned a little bit about that, because it's not just that men aren't getting blowjobs, that means they're probably not going out on dates or connecting with a
Right.
partner. And I'm wondering what that was going to look like. So that's a
Yeah.
little disheartening for sure.
Yeah, and then this one that 30% of men would choose a blowjob over sex, over penetrative sex if they had to choose. And I was like, wow. So that just shows you how 30%. That's a lot that
Yeah.
would choose blowjob over penetrative sex, if they had to choose. And the good news is we don't have to choose.
Right.
But if you had to choose, and so that again, that just shows me like how much, right? And here's the thing I want to say: if you're a woman out there listening or watching this podcast, and it's just a no for you, like you don't like it. Again, you're going to hear me say this, Toby and I, in every episode. But communicate that, right? Like communicate that's a hard no for you, and why. There's other things this is not to say you have to give a blowjob to your partner. What our intention is to give you some tools, some tips, some tricks, so that you can enjoy it more, so your partner can enjoy it more, and to use it as a learning tool in your sexuality, right? And also, this is more anecdotally, although I believe that research would back it up too. What I've seen in working with my clients in sex and intimacy coaching is that long-term couples, men receive less blowjobs than they did when they're out there dating, or than they did when the relationship was new. And again, that's kind of back to my passion of like helping couples have long-term sustained passion.
Yeah.
And oral sex is a really beautiful, right? And a lot of people report that feels more intimate than having sex. So you have this tool that brings great pleasure that men really like, that can bring men great pleasure that many men really like, the fabulous orgasm with it, and a huge intimacy tool. And yet often in long-term partnerships, it dwindles over the years, and it doesn't have to.
Yeah. All right. So we learned some stats.
All right.
Now where are we headed?
All right. So I would say the number one tip, which is going to be very anticlimactic for all of you out there, is that the number one tip is the attitude of the giver. The attitude of the person giving the blowjob.
That makes sense.
So the attitude of the giver, right? If let's say you're a woman and you're giving this blowjob, what is your attitude? Are you in curiosity? Are you in enjoyment? This is the giver we're talking about. Are you in adoration?
Yeah.
Right? Are you enjoying the control? Because you have a lot of control when you're giving a blowjob, right? So what is your attitude as the giver? So again, a little anticlimactic, but the number one tip is the attitude of the giver. So just getting curious about it. And so hopefully some of these other tips will help you, if you are the giver, to be more in that, right? And one of the things I love to say is, when was the last time you approached your partner sexually with devotion, right? Back to the sacred sexuality piece. Like this can be a beautiful act of devotion, right? If you're like, oh my God, I gotta get a blowjob, that's horrible, I'm just gonna counting my time, you're doing your grocery list as you're doing it, I promise it is not gonna be a great blowjob.
It's not. That's so funny you did that voice too. Oh my God, I gotta do this. Still gotta get the Velveeta cheese, gotta get the Diet Cokes. That you're right. That sets you up that ain't gonna be good.
It's not gonna be good.
And your partner's gonna know that.
Totally.
The guy's going to know that, oh, she's just not enjoying it. And that makes it really, you're right. It makes it so much less enjoyable. You know what I mean? You want your partner to, like you said, that what a neat idea. Devotion there is not about the blowjob. It's about to the heart and to the head and to the person, that's really powerful there.
Beautiful. Yeah. And it really can be. And so anyway, the attitude piece. Okay. Then let's get into a little anatomy, because I love anatomy, right? So when we tend to, like, especially with porn, right? Like they portray a blowjob very in one sort of way, fast and furious sort of thing. And that might be enjoyable to your partner. So a little bit about the anatomy and a little bit about communication. So the head of the penis has the most nerve endings. Okay. And on the frenulum, the piece of skin between the head of the penis and the shaft has the most nerve endings. So focusing there is a good idea, but I wouldn't say start there, because this whole thing is a warm up. This whole thing is just like everything is about building pleasure. So a lot of women will tend to start there, and it can even be overwhelming to the man. And it can be like, right, you're like, it's like, enjoy the whole thing, right? So don't start with the genitals, like start, right? We have all these other erogenous zones, and we tend to be so genital focused. So, neck, ears, lips, breasts for men, right? Nipples for men is an erogenous zone. So not starting right in the genitals. But then when we talk about the anatomy and genitals, the head of the penis, the frenulum, and then another like anatomy tip is, I said we could call that the title of the episode. I would say don't forget the balls. Okay. Don't forget the testicles.
Could have been.
Right?
Don't forget the
But,
balls.
but like that was like a little
Yeah.
too in your face. No pun intended. So don't forget the testicles. They're
Yeah.
very like, right. There's a thing about like men will put their, right, the joke that like they'll put their hand down their pants. Often they're actually like touching their testicles because it creates a feeling of safety for the man, like of being held, right? So don't forget the testicles, right? And I've talked to many women, they're like, well, I don't like to put the testicles in my mouth. I'm like, well, you have two hands. Like you don't have to use your mouth right there, right? So I would say don't forget the testicles. And then also the perineum, right? So the area between the testicles and the anus, that's actually how you can stimulate the prostate externally without even being inside of the anus. And that's a really enjoyable place. Plus the shaft of the penis actually runs back that direction. So we tend to focus on what we can see of the penis, but there's so much more pleasurable anatomy there. And so, all of this to be said, the reason I go back to anatomy, because I love the anatomy, I love teaching the anatomy, is that most of us don't know that. Most men don't even know that. Most
Yeah.
men don't even know how they can stimulate their prostate externally. So explore, like get curious. Don't do what you've always done. Like this is the invitation to the giver of the blowjob to like really explore. And then here's the thing. You're kind of exploring with curiosity, hopefully with a spirit of adoration, and ask for feedback from your partner. So listen to their breath, ask them to say, like, do you like that? Do you want more pressure, right? Really getting feedback, right? So communication, communication, communication. I know I say it in every episode because you cannot have fabulous sex without great communication. You just
Yeah.
can't. Okay. You might get lucky and have great sex, but it won't be sustainable. So communicate, listen to their breath, listen to how they're moving their pelvis, but also ask, right? Did you like that? Do you want more of that? Right. And giving permission for the receiver to give a lot of feedback.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. A lot of stuff you said there is just dead on. I think one of the things too about going back to the balls is that everybody's just taught it's just a guy gets kicked in the balls and then he's just down on the ground. So everybody thinks the balls, they are very sensitive for sure, but that doesn't mean that they should just be neglected. I think oftentimes people think, oh, don't go down there because it could hurt, or don't squeeze too hard, don't pull, don't, and it is a different, looking piece of skin down there. And there are two, nuts down in there, but I think it, like you just said, the thing is, does this feel good? What more could I do to, try things, introduce things slowly. And then I think all of that, but you're right, because I think sometimes people just think it's just go up and down on the shaft and the head. And then that's what a blowjob is. And then obviously the giver is not going to enjoy that as much because it's just nonstop, just doing that. And the receiver is just going to be like, oh, I guess this is it. Like take your time. And you're right. You have two hands are amazing. They are very amazing. I mean, we have opposable thumbs for a reason. They're amazing. So.
No, that's so great. Just like two things you said there were so true. First of all, we have two hands, so you got 10 fingers and our opposable thumbs. You also have two lips and a tongue, right? So like there's a lot of things that can be used in oral sex. And I would say play with, that's another tip, right? Play with one hand, play with two hands, play with no hands, right? Yeah. Like there's all these different things, but getting that feedback piece, because, and back to the testicles for a minute, like definitely err on the side of gentler, because they can be very sensitive for many men. But, I have found just in my own like sexual history, like it varies from man to man, right? So sometimes really firm, but start gentle and ask for feedback, right? And what tends to be painful is that they get kicked in or pulled down too hard. So just, being thoughtful about that, but getting the feedback, right, is so key. And I can say as a woman, like when I was young, I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to read a bunch of articles on giving a blowjob and just like do what, which is great. But then it was really about asking for feedback from my partner. And I had a partner earlier in my life who said, I've never been asked for feedback, and that was really like, it felt really like spacious to him to be able to say, oh, I really like that. You also, like when it comes to testicles, you can say, show me how you want your testicles. Like that's super hot and sexy in and of itself. Like, show me how you want to touch your testicles. Right. Yeah. So that's a little bit about that. We talked about one hand, two hands, no hands. I think speed, right? We know what we see in porn, but like speed, play with the speed, ask for feedback on the speed, pressure, right? I would say teeth, use very sparingly, if at all. And but they can be really beautiful, very gently, if at all, and ask for feedback. But if you're worried about it, go with no teeth, because
Yeah.
these are sensitive parts, right?
Yeah. I'm pro no teeth myself, but
Yeah. So, right, everyone's different. So this
yeah.
is the thing, right? Another great little tip is you can blindfold your partner if they're open to it with consent, right? Because then when we take away our visual stimuli, although some men really love to watch their woman giving a blowjob, but it's something to play with because you take away the visual stimuli, you really touches you into other sensation, tunes them into
Mhm.
other sensations. So you can practice with like saying they have no hands, restraining their hands, or saying a rule that they don't get to use their hands at all, right? Like there's
Yeah.
all these different things to play with. Even though you're focusing a blowjob on the penis and the testicles and the genitals, there are all these other parts, right? So another great tip is start, stop, right? We don't just have, like, I mean, literally have had women that are like, my jaw starts to hurt. And it's like, well, you actually are in control. You can stop, you can use hands, you can, take a break, you can kiss, you can do whatever. So start and stop is a really great, because I think a lot of women are like, oh gosh, I've heard that, like, oh, like I'm just sucking, 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 and my jaw's hurting. It's like,
Yeah.
then you're not in that spirit of curiosity. You're not in that spirit of enjoyment. Like that is not what your partner is wanting either.
Yeah. Not at
And
all.
then another thing is vibrators are great, right? Like a vibrator that can be used on the perineum or on the testicles or on the shaft of the penis is a really great way if your partner is wanting more sensation. Also take some of the burden of
Yeah.
sensation off of the giver, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, there's toys also that, I mean, we even sell them at Marriage Supply that
Mm-hmm.
assist in like masturbation or blowjob simulation that is really nice to use. One of the things I think we're touching on here too is just like I feel like we've been kind of told wrongly about the balls, that it's only kicked in the balls, stay away from them because it's so sensitive. I think one thing too is boys growing up are just always told, stop touching your pee-pee. And you have to
Mm-hmm.
pull it out to pee with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like boys know their penises so well because they're holding them to go to the bathroom. They're scratching them, like you said. There's all
Mm-hmm.
this stuff. And the penis and balls aren't that attractive. Unfortunately, I wish they looked a billion times better. But what we got is what we got. But it is just going back to that, even that devotion comment or whatever, just making your guy like feel like, oh, you have a beautiful penis, or man, that's awesome, or
Mm-hmm.
like I'm enjoying
Mm-hmm.
doing this with you because I love it.
Totally.
Because men oftentimes are the most insecure about their penises, and they've been told don't touch them. Either you're too sexual, oh, it's getting hard. Why is it
Mm-hmm.
getting hard? All these different things that
Mm-hmm.
as guys, and I'm not letting guys off the hook here, but often because guys can be rotten with their penises for sure. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that making sure you got even if you do a little bit, but let them go, oh man, I enjoy you so much. I enjoy your body. Wow,
Totally.
look at the
That's
way you
yeah.
look. Like
Yeah.
that can make you feel so amazing. Men should do that to women. Women should do that to partners and all this stuff. But
Absolutely.
yeah, for sure.
Totally. Well, and I disagree with you about the penis. I think the penis is gorgeous, but
You
so for
would.
all you,
You would.
for all you penis owners out there, the penis is gorgeous. But also what you said, I love about the like, right, dirty talk or sexy talk, whatever you want to call it, right? The giver, if you're a woman giving a blowjob or whatever, whoever you are, a person giving a blowjob, to give a lot of feedback. Like, I love the way you taste. I love, I
Yeah.
love the look of your penis, the feel of your cock, whatever it is, your
Yeah.
language with your partner. But giving that feedback is so amazing and really like nurturing to the person's soul,
Yeah.
right? And that
Yes.
back to that kind of art of devotion. And that's, it is an art, right? So giving a great blowjob is an art. There is science, like there's anatomy, there's like tools and tips. But again, the number one tip I started with is the attitude of the giver, right? And maybe you are with a man, this is a hetero couple. If you're a woman giving a blowjob to a man, maybe your man has never orgasmed from a blowjob. That's a thing I get a lot. I hear a lot with my clients, right? Or a lot with just questions I get asked, DMs and stuff about that. Like, I've never orgasmed. It's like, okay, great. Well, my next question is, do you enjoy it? Because if that's keeping you from enjoying it, there's your work as the man,
Right.
right? You can totally enjoy a blowjob and not orgasm, not come from a blowjob. Okay. But and if that feels like a barrier, and I know a lot of men it does feel like a barrier, then enjoy the blowjob. Use it as foreplay, and then move on to penetrative sex if
Yeah.
that's what the two of you decide. Right? It can be a beautiful part of the foreplay. It can also be totally its own thing, and it's a different quality of a different experience of an orgasm orgasming into a woman's mouth, or even if she, spit or swallow. We talked about that in a listener question before, but it's a different experience. And so it's really a beautiful, I believe it's a beautiful practice. I believe it can be a beautiful practice. I think the reason that I have heard that women often are hesitant to do it is, one is they just, right, long-term relationships, like, oh, we just go right to sex, like, let's just skip that, a lot of work sort of attitude.
Right.
The other is like, oh, my jaw hurts, or I don't know what I'm doing. I get that a lot, right? I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just literally like feel like a high school student trying to like figure it out, right? And then the other is like, well, I don't get any feedback, so I don't know how to read my partner. All of those things can be addressed, right? Like, that's the hope of this podcast, is to give you some tools to be able to add a blowjob into your sexual repertoire, or add it back in a different way.
Yeah, 100%. All the things you're talking. Are we going to another topic too, or where are you at right now?
No, I think that's probably enough tips. I don't want
to
overwhelm anyone.
Well, I might have a couple. One thing that I think for sure is men always practice good hygiene, and that means washing your penis, washing your balls, and going back there to the butthole and the whole area. Just wash the whole thing really good. That is fair. You maybe you work hard all day, all this stuff, and you just be really kind and think about your partner and what they would enjoy more. That's totally fair. And then I would say as well, I would switch it up. Like, if you're doing a blowjob from the side, next time through the legs, or standing up and you kneeling, like, always try different things, because you actually don't know what you really like until you try it. You might hate it. You might go, I don't ever want to do that again. And that's fine. You can laugh, you can cut up. I think that communication and trying new things just keeps a little bit of the adventure, a little bit of the curiosity. What if we tried this?
Absolutely.
that curious journey together is so fun. It is so nice to go, hey, would you want to try this? And your partner goes, we could. I don't know if it'll work. And then you're on an adventure together, and you might both die laughing, or it didn't work out, or it's whatever. But then you're even connecting even more. So I'd say definitely a lot of the tips that Stormy's talking about here, try it all. I mean, first with communication and consent, obviously, but try a bunch of different things. Don't just settle in for one thing, because today this might feel really good, but a month from now, something else might really hit you in a way.
Yeah, totally.
This is cool. So mix it
up.
It's
such a great point, right? Position, right? We think of like man laying on his back and woman not like kneeling over. That's one of many positions to give a blowjob in. So I love that you just brought that up. Great.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So I got to stump Stormy for you if you're ready for it. All right.
Ready.
Stumping Stormy.
It's time to Stump Stormy.
Okay. I got a few here actually. So I'll just give you some, and then we'll kind of go on from there.
Okay.
You might know this, but this actually came from the website Bad Girls Bible. Is a study that was done out of over 1,000 heterosexual and bisexual women. What is a woman's favorite way to finish a blowjob? Like, what way do they want to finish? And so it could be come in my mouth and I swallow, come on my body, come in my mouth and I spit. They never come, and it never touches my body, or they come on my face. What do you think's number one?
I would guess that number one would be swallow.
You're right. 55.5% of women select this option. What do you think the least enjoyable way for a woman to finish a blowjob is?
Statistically, I would say probably statistically might be come on my face.
100%. You nailed it. 3.8, only 3.8% of women chose that. And I wondered, that's interesting, because I think that really probably stems from porn. The idea there is is it that the man gets to come on your face and mark his territory? Is it potentially degrading? What is the allure there? Because it's just you're semen on somebody's face. It's not really like, you know what I mean? Like I've seen it a million times in porn, and so there's a reason that it's that way. But maybe like within porn, it's almost still, they're doing things that you don't do often in real life. Like it's set up. They're actors. They're paid to be there. They're doing different takes. seems to be the case. Every lady I've ever been with, that was their least favorite. It didn't even make any sense to them.
Right.
Like, why are you doing that? Now I got to clean it up.
Right.
What is it?
Right. Well, I think you nailed it, right? I don't know this, but anecdotally, I would say that I think porn has given that expression, we'll call it,
Yeah.
a bad rap. Right. That it's often it's like a stranger, they're strangers, and the woman is, just kneeling and that doesn't have a say. But
Right.
what I would say is, if that's of interest to you, if you are the person with a penis and that's of interest to you, ask your partner, say like, how would that feel for you? Like, and maybe she's like, no, that feels degrading to me. It's like, well, now you're having a great conversation about that, right? Like, this is the whole point. If that's something that's exciting, feels exciting to you, or like, it could even be like, hey, would you be open to trying this and just seeing, because I've never done this, or like that, you're having the conversation about it. But the reason I guessed that answer is definitely because of porn.
Yeah, 100%. All right, I got one more for you too. And this came from the same study. When asked, how long do you like a blowjob to last for, what percentage of women selected as long as my partner wants option?
Not that many. I wouldn't think. I would say not that many. I'm going to go with, so what percentage of women said that as long as my partner would like? I'm going to go with 38%.
Very close, 40%. You were really wow, what a good answer, Stormy. Man, you are nailing this. Now, I believe that this study, that still feels really high. Because and when you're writing the study, you're like, oh, I love my man. As long as he wants, I'm happy to. I've been in situations where it's like, oh, it's been a minute already. Oh, what do we get? So it's a little different taking the test than when the deed is being done, I will say.
Right.
But that's encouraging that the ladies are even thinking that way. Like they want to, pleasure their man, and as long as he wants it. But I don't know in practice if that happens 40% people or not. But good for you, ladies.
What I would say there is, you also, I think that can feel like a relinquishing of control, but you ladies out there, we're talking in a hetero couple here, you are very much in control when you're giving a blowjob, which is, I can say personally, is one of the things that I find that makes it the most sexy for me, right? Like I am really in control. Also, if I'm like exhausted, or I'm just done, or my partner isn't receiving in the way that I'm desiring, like you can shift into other things, right? You don't have to keep going, right? Like that's part of the beauty of it. Let your partner enjoy it for as long as you're enjoying it, right? And make this a practice, right? Like the whole idea is that it is an art, and you're practicing this art together.
Yeah, you're 100% right. All right, you nailed it, Stormy. Now let's get to some listener questions.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
Have a question? We've got answers. Here's this week's listener question.
All right, this first one, monitoring the situation. This comes from monitoring the situation. We're new parents to an amazing little girl. Obviously, being a new baby, she requires a lot of attention and, of course, love. But my wife will go to her anytime she hears her through the baby monitor. I know that this is needed and loving for our daughter, but also my wife has left several times during sex. I want to love and care for our daughter fully, but also I want us to recognize that just because our daughter is crying doesn't mean we necessarily have to stop everything we're doing. This even goes for us watching movies or spending time with each other talking. How do I approach this without seeming like a jerk? Or am I being one? Love the show.
Oh, that's a great question, right? So a couple of things as I was hearing that come up is really like, if you're new parents, right, this is a great opportunity to talk about your parenting strategies. So bigger than the sex piece, right? Often our parenting strategies came from our family of origin, right? We parent as we were parented. Often we don't have to, but that's certainly is an informative piece. So this is a great opportunity to like have questions about, like you talk about crying it out, right? So you're talking about crying it out versus not crying it out, basically, in a summary. So what are your thoughts on that? What are her thoughts on that? Really having conversations about what that's going to look like. You have a valid point about like not always rushing right in when your daughter is crying. And also like, what does that bring up for her, right? I can say as a young mom, I was like, my son was really sick. He had a really serious heart disease. So I like medically felt like even when I didn't need to, I was like intuitively just felt like I had to be there. And it absolutely impacted my relationship in a negative way, right? And I had to work with that. So the invitation is to have conversations about how are you going to parent? What's that look like? Because some people are like, absolutely, I'm totally against crying it out. Also depends obviously on the age of your child developmentally. And so like read about that, have these conversations. But as far as about the sexual piece and leaving sex, I would say, again, and I say this every time, but like talk about it. So let's say your wife leaves sex, you're feeling maybe rejected or sad or neglected, whatever it is for you. First, be curious about what you're feeling when she leaves sex to go take care of the baby. And then maybe you talk about when she comes back. Maybe you don't. I would recommend depending on the level of tension that you're feeling, but have a conversation to say, gosh, when that happened the other night, I really felt abandoned or rejected or sad or whatever it is, right? And you're having a conversation about that because maybe she had no idea. She's like on wired mom mode of like, go rescue baby, right?
Right.
And then comes back in, maybe she's tired and just wants to go to sleep because now she's been up for who knows how long. So there's no, you don't start up your sexual session again, but maybe you do, right? Maybe if she's aware of it, it's like, that's part of it. It's like to help her relax and fall asleep. So if you don't have that conversation about it, and this is an opportunity for you to be in really beautiful, like divine masculine leadership to say like, hey, this is what happens for me when that happens. I know you want to care for the baby, right? Then have a good conversation about it.
Yep. 100%. I totally agree with what you're saying. And also recognize, like, you can recognize the good in this too. Like, man, when you go to discuss this and communicate your feelings, make sure you're going, man, it makes me so happy that you love our kid this much, that you would give up your own sleep, that you would give up, you would drop anything for our child that you love so much. I really appreciate that. And offer you go. Maybe next time y'all are in the middle of sex and it happens, go, babe, beautiful, you stay here, let me go. I'm okay with walking away from this because we are in this together, and then find opportunities where you can, connect again. I think that's a really good way.
Absolutely. Sure. Right. And then even like you even can have it be like sexy. Like, I love that, Toby. Like, okay, I'm gonna go, babe. You keep you self-pleasure. Yeah. You keep this going and I'll be back. Right. Yeah. Like that now it's like, oh, hello, that's super hot. Right. Like, so that's a great point. And really the communication piece about it. What are you going to do when life, including a crying baby, interrupts your sex, right? Because that happens to all of us.
Yep, it does. You cannot avoid it, and you shouldn't. This is real life. So, all right. Our next listener question is, I'll be you and you be me. The recent role play episode got my husband and I talking, and one thing that came up in our conversation was, what if we dressed as the opposite sex? We laughed, but also both of us were thinking it could be fun. Is that potentially opening doors to sexuality or possibly going too far with role play?
Oh, I got goosebumps for this question. First of all, I'm so glad the role play episode landed for you all. That's amazing. That's why Toby and I are doing this podcast. Yeah. And I would say that like there's no such thing as too far with role play, right? It's about consent and communication, just like everything. So, but if it felt exciting and sexy for both of you, I would say absolutely explore it, right?
Yeah.
As far as your question about changing sexuality, right? Sexuality is not in boxes, so I wouldn't be scared about that. And we can be, particularly if we grew up raised that way, that like our sexuality is in boxes, but you're looking at it as like you're expanding your sexuality together, right? Yeah. So you're playing at the edges, right? And if it made you laugh and it turned you on, those are two really good things, right? And then the other piece I would say, so talk about it, right? So talk about what that would look like. And I always say like play the tape all the way through. Because particularly if this feels like an edge for the both of you, which is edges are sexy, can be very sexy. Like, are you dressing as the opposite gender? Are you just acting as the opposite gender? What about penetration? Are you switching roles there? Because let's say in this case, how would the man feel to be receptive to penetration, right? Yeah. So really play it through, not in the moment, not in the role, okay, beforehand. Maybe that's the sexy talk. Like, what would this look like? That feels sexy. No, that doesn't feel quite so sexy, right? Yeah. Because you will have more success. And it's also part of the sexiness. It builds the sexiness, it builds the anticipation, but play it all the way through. Okay. That would be the biggest tip I would give to this couple. And then the last piece would be like, what's the aftercare going to look like? Like, I would really suggest that you, after the role is done, and hopefully it's wildly successful and super pleasurable for the two of you, it's like, what was that like for you? What did you learn? How did that feel? Maybe right. To Toby's point, maybe you're laughing so hard and you're like, okay, we're not going to do that again, but that was super fun and super connecting. Or maybe you're like, wow, that was super hot. I'd like to add that to our repertoire, right? So the aftercare piece is really important.
Yep. And I think everything in moderation. I know that sounds kind of biblical, but I do believe it works that way. You try something, and it, like, I think sometimes we get hung up on just doing the same thing over and over and expecting the same results. But but honestly, I think you just dip your toe into something, try it, see if it's fun, and then maybe you really love it, and that can become a component of your sex life. It's just, as always, communication.
Absolutely, right. And like you said, maybe you're like, it's sexy enough just to like act, no costumes, no props, just act like the other gender for a bit of time. That's the beauty of a role. You can make it as small or big as you want. You can make it as long or short as you want. Communication and consent are the keys.
Yep, for sure. All right. Those are some great listener questions. And feel free to email us all your listener questions. You can email Stormy at lovedeeplab.com. You can email me at toby@marriagesupply.com. And also you can email Stormy at lovedeeplab for her 30-day program or your free guide. They can find you there. Anywhere else you want to send them? Just your email. Does that work?
Yeah. On Instagram, I'm at DocStormy1, and you can follow along there.
Yep. Doc Stormy 1. Your TikTok is touchy subjects with 3 S's at the end. And Marriage Supply is on Instagram. We're at the.marriagesupply, the.marriage.supply on Instagram. And if you use code SEX101, you get 10% off at marriagesupply.com right now. What another great episode. As always, knowledge is power. Sex is power.
And the world needs more of both.